This conference will now be recorded.
So folks can view it after the fact. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Rob.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Dennard. I'm the Vice Chair of the Iowa 911 Communications Council. Our chair, Rob Rotter, wasn't able to be with us today and asked me to facilitate the meeting. I hail from West Des Moines. We'll start off this morning with a roll call of the council members. Kara?
Okay, Tracy Bearden,
Here.
Lawrence Hartpence. Chair Rotter's absent, but I think I saw Dean Kruger, who's his alternate. Is Dean here? And it looks like Lawrence just popped up. Dean, are you here?
Yes,
George
I'm here.
Okay, George Griffith,
Yeah, I'm here.
Mike Bryant,
Present.
Mark Murphy,
I'm here.
Jeff Anderson,
I'm here.
Richard Pierce, Rob Dennard is here, Jack D'Angelo,
Here.
Taylor Teeple. And going back, was Richard Pierce here? Okay, you have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
So moved. Tracy Bearden.
There's a second.
Griffith was second.
So motion by Bearden, a second by Griffith to approve today's agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes of the March 11th meeting? If not, I'd entertain a motion for its approval.
Mark Murphy.
Motion by Murphy, a second.
Second Bearden.
Second by Bearden. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. The State of Iowa Administrator Report. Blake?
Thank you. Just a second while I get my slides up.
Time's up. Moving on. I'm very
Does that mean
efficient.
there's a motion to adjourn?
I got three screens, so I'm trying to figure out which one to share here. So
Okay.
sorry about that. All right, there we go. I think you can see the right screen. All right, so this, just jumping right in, and there's a lot to get to, so appreciate your patience. This map is what we've been showing for a while now. It shows where we have migrated the wireline traffic onto the next generation 911 network. And you can see that we are at the nice round number of 100 PSAPs, and it is nice and green at this point. But that does kind of bring the question of the remaining PSAPs, and to be totally honest, we have purposefully kind of left these PSAPs towards the end because they are the most challenging. At this point, I just want to yield a little bit of time to Mike Lauer with the ICN to kind of go over the plan to migrate those remaining PSAPs. Mike, are you on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your time. As it states here, we do have 13 PSAPs that are yet to be converted to the state NGCS wireline portion of the the NGCS network. 12 of those 13 PSAPs happen to be Sally sites, so that means that they have multiple local trunks provided by multiple local telco partners. So we are still having conversations there with those local telco partners, as well as also ones, since Lumen is connected to some of those, we have identified 8 of those 13 already have Lumen connectivity, and because of the connectivity that is already in place on the selective router network that Lumen has on the legacy network, we are actually going to go forward with getting the Lumen only traffic cut over here. So what you can actually see down below is that's just a proposed tentative date. I believe actually Humboldt might not be at that 5-6 timeframe, but that's what has been proposed. So as you can see, of those 8 PSAPs, we are looking to at least get 4 of those completed, proposed completed here within the month of April. Now that is Lumen only traffic, that does not include the other local telco providers. And then the other 4 would be proposed to be completed in May. That will leave 5 remaining PSAPs that kind of have some special circumstances. And those, like I said, those are still being worked out per provider. They might actually need new trunks that have to be connected to the NGCS network, or in some cases, and just use Pottawatomie County, they have a specific transfer type of setup that we have to make sure Douglas County, Nebraska is taken care of, and they are working with their CPE provider to make sure that's happening, and we should have some answers on that soon. But for the most part, we do have a plan going forward. We will get the Lumen traffic cut over, and then we will look to establish agreements and connectivity with the other local providers as it's an ongoing conversation to get that other 911 traffic over to the NGCS. I do not have a time frame on when that will happen, because it will, of course, depending on what goes forward with those other providers and those other 5 to 8 PSAPs, we would have to, or at least 5 to 12, I should say, we would have to, install new services and so on and so forth, and that takes some time frame. So still waiting on that, but again, that we at least have some intermediary steps to get this finished and hopefully buttoned up here soon for the state of Iowa. Any questions?
And I have a couple other things to add, because there's a couple other conversations that are involved with kind of what Mike described, and the rest of getting those onboarded. But I can go into that now, and then we can maybe pause and see if there's any questions for either of us. So part of what Mike described is still migrating those direct trunks to a point of aggregation, be that the Lumen selective router or the ICN points of aggregation. And that goes directly to some of the conversations we've been having previously here and in other settings, and even really kind of goes directly to the cost recovery bill that was down at the Capitol, which is now dead for the session. So we did send out a letter to PSAPs and to telcos that really kind of gets to the heart of what we're trying to do here. And that is identify what costs are being charged by wireline providers. Again, when we started this effort to merge the wireline traffic onto the next generation network, it was under the assumption and impression that we would be absorbing those costs, or at least alleviate those costs from the local a local expense. As we got into this, we realized that there were costs that were not identified as part of our contract with the ICN. So throughout the last probably year, we've kind of been working on this effort to try to figure out how we do capture those costs. And we quickly realized that telcos bill various items, and that there's not one standard across the state. The other thing, when you think about this for a while, we are not in a position to just have you all the PSAPs forward on your costs to us at this point. There's a couple things that we have to do first. We need to make sure that we know what we're getting into when we start taking on those costs. And that being said, as we've looked at the various invoices that are provided to PSAPs, some have one line item, others have 10. There's not really a standard. And again, we just need to identify what is being charged to make sure they are legitimately 911 wireline centric costs. And in the process of even having that conversation, a lot has changed as far as infrastructure since 911 was put into place however many years ago, 30, 40 years ago. So we would not be interested in paying for 911 circuitry that's no longer being used. So this quickly gets into a larger project that does include the PSAPs as well as the local telcos to do a couple things. Have a local conversation about what is currently being billed. Make sure it is all relative and needed still for 911 call delivery. If there are circuits that are no longer in use, then let's get those removed. Let's also, and this goes into some of the letter as well, streamline or better identify what the costs are. And this is an ask of the telcos that's spelled out in the letter, and that is to better itemize or standardize what is being charged and what those are being called on invoices, and those are listed there. And at that point, we would ask the PSAPs to basically forward on copies of those bills to us so we can look at them and get an idea of what that total cost is. So, have the local conversation, see what, if anything, can be removed, modify invoicing practices so we know what is being charged. In some cases, it's basically impossible to tell what is being charged. And then we can have an educated conversation about what that cost is in the state and our ability to take over those costs. And we did ask for an aggressive timeline on all of this. We asked for all of that to be completed by the end of July. That gives us time to aggregate those costs, look at them, analyze them, see what the level of participation was. Quite frankly, if PSAPs don't participate in this, I think the message is, well, you don't want us to take over your costs. If the telcos don't participate in this, then I think the message is, well, they're unwilling to even come to the table and have a discussion on this. Both of those are important data points towards this conversation going forward. So there's been some questions that our office has received, and I think there has been really good participation already so far by both PSAPs and telco. So I appreciate that. And again, the bottom line is we are, still intending to take this over. We just want to know what we're taking over and know what the total obligation will be down the road. So again, that kind of goes into some of those delays that Mike explained on moving the direct trunked PSAPs to a different point of aggregation as far as who pays for what and what type of recurring costs we're getting into. With that, I think I can pause and ask if there's any questions from anyone. I explained it so well, there's no questions. All right. If you do have any questions behind the scenes or want to ask offline, that's totally understandable, and I'm happy to answer questions that way as well. So I will go ahead and move on then. Legislative update, I already kind of mentioned the cost recovery bill is dead for the session. It did pass committee, but it did not pass any of the chambers before the funnel weeks. The Utilities Board cleanup language is still progressing. That basically just adds back in the definitions of local exchange carrier and competitive local exchange carrier. Those had accidentally been removed as a cross-reference in previous year's legislation. Happy to report that all of the forms have been submitted. So that includes expenditure collection forms, which means we do not have to withhold any surcharge, which is always good for us and good for the PSAPs. One thing that I am working on and I hope to have for you next month is some of the trends. When this has been about a 6-year process at this point, so we're starting to get some good data over time that we can show trends as far as expenditures and what it takes to run a PSAP. If you remember, that's kind of the intent behind that report is what does it take to operate a PSAP cost-wise. So not just the totals over those 6 years, but also where are we seeing increases or decreases in the various categories? Is it in capital expenditures, or is it in radio infrastructure, or is it in 911 communications equipment? So I think that's an interesting thing to look at. So I'm putting all of that together from the previous 6 years across all of those categories, and hope to have that for you in the next month just to take a look at. To see where, again, the trends are in the expenditures of PSAPs. And then the last bullet there, just to note, we have federal reports that we have to complete every year, and actually your local expenditure forms feed directly into those federal reports that I have to submit. So really just a note to make everyone aware that those two reports are open and accepting submissions, and that is the National 911 Profile Database, which is through the National 911 Office, and then the FCC fee report, which tracks a lot of things, but primarily tracks fee diversion. But again, it really gets into some information about call counts and types of calls and how funds are expended as well. So both of those reports are open. They're really open for submission for a number of months, I think like the end of June. So just to make everyone aware that I am completing those and will be submitting them before too long. Any questions before I move on? Okay. Just earlier this week, we sent out the March GIS grant information. 17 additional counties met the benchmarks for a total of $102,000 for the month. That brings the total for the second 6-month period of the year to 69 counties. And then the total so far for the fiscal year is just a hair over $1 million. And a reminder of the benchmarks for 2022, haven't really received any feedback on that. So most likely these will be the benchmarks that we'll publish and go with. It's the 98% GIS, 98% Alley to Road Centerline, so no change there, but then also the 0 critical errors as well. So again, if you have any feedback on that, happy to hear it, but we have not received any so far, and that will be increasingly more important to meet those standards as we move to a GIS-based MSAG later this fall. You do have one training application to consider by Buena Vista County, and that is for the training course called We're All 911 Right. I do have that up for display a little bit later when you all consider that. And with that, I will turn it over to Zetron for an update on the shared services project.
Good morning. This is Lynn Warren from Zetron. I hope you can hear me, and I apologize if there's any background noise because Thursday is garbage day, so there's a lot of garbage trucks going outside my office. Buchanan went live yesterday on Iowa Shared Services, and we talked last month when I was presenting here about the disaster recovery truck. Next week we will be doing connectivity testing and with all the circuits, and on April 21st we will be doing call testing, and after that is completed, I think the truck should be open for business, coordinating through Blake when you might need it to support your PSAP. We also have 6 other PSAPs that signed up since March, so we're extremely busy right now getting all those deployments planned. Next slide. And this is our state chart. All the green are the PSAPs that are currently live, including Buchanan. And over the next couple months, we'll see another 6 of those go green. And I think that's all I have to present. Oh, just one more. Yeah, we have a monthly newsletter that we send out. It's called the Iowa Insight. Was I on mute the whole time?
No, on my end, it kind of came across a little spotty on the very last slide, but the rest of the time you were good.
Okay, because it looked like it kind of went back mute. Yeah, if anybody would like to get a copy of the Iowa Insider, just send an email to lwarren@zetron.com and we'll get you signed up, and you can get all the latest information that's going on with the Iowa Shared Services program.
Thank you, Lynn. So again, we covered a lot in that section. So if there are any questions about the telco letter that we worked on with Iowa Communication Alliance, or we've presented about the disaster recovery PSAP a couple times now. So if there's any questions on anything, don't hesitate to either reach out to us or ask them here, and I'll pause a second before I turn it back over. All right, Mr. Chair, I think it's yours.
Thank you, Blake and others. Next item is a training funds request from Buena Vista County for $2,700 for the program We're All 911 Right. Is there anyone from Buena Vista County that'd like to speak on their behalf? You see the application there in front of you. I think it was also in our materials. If there's no discussion about it, I'd entertain a motion to approve the request.
Anderson will move to approve.
Motion by Anderson. Is there a second for approval?
Murphy, second.
A second by Mark Murphy. All in favor of approving the Buena Vista County training fund request for $2,700 for the We Are All 911 Right program, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries. Reports of officers, boards, and standing committees. The first one is any technical advisories. This is an open comment period for any technical or telecommunication partner information. Does anyone have anything?
This is Jack D'Angelo, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything this morning.
Very good. Can anyone speak on the mandatory 10-digit dialing that's coming up here in the, I think both 515 and 641, is that right? The permissive dialing starts later this month.
This is Blake. I can take it, but maybe there's somebody better. I don't know if your utilities board is on and would be able to talk at all.
Anyone from IUB?
Okay, I'll do my best. The 10-digit dialing is actually for the 515 and 319 area codes, and that basically means that you will have to start dialing all 10 digits. And the reason behind that is tied in with the National Suicide Hotline migration to the 988 short code. So if you think about it, 988 will become the National Suicide Hotline. So if you go to dial 988 in the 515 area codes or 319 area codes, instead of reaching Bob Smith down the road, who you think you're calling 988-1234, you're actually going to reach the National Suicide Hotline. So in those specific area codes, there is provisioning being done that you will have to now start dialing all 10 digits. So 515-988-1234 if you want to get Bob Smith down the road. Otherwise, if you just dial 988, you will get the National Suicide Hotline. So our office, as well as I believe APCO and NENA in Iowa, are involved in a grant project kind of headed up with the Department of Human Services in Iowa, as well as Iowa Department of Public Health, to roll this out in Iowa as well, at least from the National Suicide Hotline portion of it. So there will be more to come on that effort. Again, 911 is kind of involved in the periphery, but again, the 10-digit dialing, for this group is probably, of significance and of note. And like the chair mentioned, I believe that goes into place. Is it next month or later on this summer? So yeah, that will be coming out, and I think you've already started to see some information come out from the Iowa Utilities Board as far as marketing and public information.
Actually, April 24th is when permissive 10-digit dialing starts, that they'll allow sort of this practice period for 6 months. Then it becomes mandatory on October 24th of this year.
That sounds right. Yep, that sounds more right. Thanks, Rob, for clarifying that.
Any questions about that? Yes, Lawrence.
So, I'm sorry, so 515 and 319 are the only area codes that have 988 telephone numbers?
Correct, in the state of Iowa. And then, of course, there's a number of states as well, but in Iowa, it's specific to 515 and 319.
Thank you.
I'm going to put a link in the chat that takes you to a document from the, I think it's an FCC document or an NPA document, National Number Plan people that describes this in greater detail and has all those dates and other information if you haven't seen that yet. The link's in the chat. All right, any other technical advisory items?
Chair, this is Mike Lauer from the ICN. I'm obviously not part of the board, but I did want to know if this would be an okay time to bring up just a few considerations on the 10-digit dialing, since we're on that topic.
Absolutely, good timing.
Okay, so a few things here, and this comes more from the kind of telephone provider perspective, but in that 515 and 319 area codes, there are some considerations that businesses, maybe even some of our emergency communication partners need to take into consideration, and really that kind of comes down to dial outs for like emergency lines and fire alarms. Sometimes these systems will go to a local system, and a lot of telcos are already sending this information out, but this is probably a good just reminder area here. If you're in a building or you have constituents that use any type of emergency dial down, like in an elevator or fire alarms, those types of devices will need to be configured, as well as just another thought here is if anyone has a local PBX or phone system and they are fed by what are considered PRIs or trunks, T1 trunks, and they have local and long distance in that 515 and 319 area codes, they're assuming that the one number is how they dial out long distance. That allows for that traffic to be routed down long distance trunks. That's good, but if it's on 10-digit, now that everything's going to 10-digit, there's probably a consideration that folks will need to make with their PBX vendor or technician to make sure that they allow for that 10-digit dial, because you might see if they just key on 10 digits, you might start to see local calls going down your long distance provider, and your long distance provider will take that traffic, and then you will have charges for what could be local calls. It's usually a very small percentage of folks that do it like that, but there are older systems out there that key on kind of 10-digit dialing and send it down long distance. So there are considerations out there. I do know from ICN's perspective, we are sending out information to our customers of who that affects, but there's also a lot of other telcos that are sending out this same common information saying, hey, here's things that folks need to think about. So there are a lot more than just picking up the phone and dialing. There are some phone considerations that might have impact on customer bills, and also on, like I said, the fire alarm or just emergency call out ring outs that go to local numbers. Those things will need to be addressed locally by vendors or technicians. So that's all I wanted to add.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Any other questions or comments about the 10-digit dialing or any other technical item for the group? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to an update from the Iowa Interoperability Governance Board. Swick Myers, are you on?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir, and good morning to the 911 Council. Updates from the ISXB this month. We have some updates on our technical assistance requests. Our state-sponsored CompT in cooperation with the Iowa National Guard is ongoing. We had 10 signups for that course, and today they are working on a functional exercise. We will be having an announcement on COML courses, courses being plural, coming up in the next couple of weeks. Look for one to be far-reaching and likely virtual, and another one possibly in person. You just heard me talk about 2 in-person courses. From what I have been able to gather, as a collective state, we're the first state to offer in-person training over the last 11 months. So we're gradually working towards opening this back up and providing more training opportunities for public safety stakeholders. So that's good news. One last item to update you on with respect to TA requests. The memorandum of agreement with CISA has been executed for our Iowa FOG. With the execution of that MOA and the start of that program, we'll end up with a state level TICP and a field operations guide EFOG that will be compatible with both Android and iOS devices. So that's exciting. We'll hopefully get that off the ground in the next few weeks. As far as STR trailers go, the East STR has been demobbed out of Atkins. It's having some service work done on it post-deployment, and it's likely going to be sidelined for the next couple of weeks. Once that work is completed, it'll go back to its normal staging spot in Johnson County. The West STR deployment in Clinton is still ongoing, and as that progresses, I will update the council here of any status changes of those resources. PSAP training, we are looking at rolling out, of course, our next version of ISICS training. We're waiting on some standards to be updated, and once those are done, this will be launched. We're also still offering one-on-one training that is agency-based for interoperability. This includes the interoperable talk groups and the use of status board. And again, we've been able to execute these training sessions both in person and virtually. We can do multiple sessions if you need it to in order to accommodate your dispatchers and personnel to avoid excess overtime. And of course, there's no cost for this training. ISICS applications approved over the last month. Franklin County EMA at level 3 access for dispatch consoles. Fulton County, Illinois has joined ISICS for interoperability. They're just across the river from Clinton County. Washington County was also approved last month for level 2 access. ISICS applications that are up for approval today include Butler County at level 3 for dispatch consoles. Joe Davies, Illinois, that's a county just across the border from Dubuque County. Johnson County, they're updating to level 2 access for an operable talk group. Plymouth County, level 3 access, and Marion County EMA, level 2 access. Standards and policy updates over the last month. An update to standard 1.5.0 was approved. Standard 1.5.0 covers the ISICS regional and statewide interoperability talk groups. Some language was updated to include things like status board in that document. The comment period for our 700 megahertz air-to-ground channels and the ISICS standard 1.5.2, which covers emergency landing zones for air ambulances. Those are on the agenda for approval today. We did receive one comment for standard 1.5.2, and that comment has been adjudicated. The LTE deployable policy is still out for public comment. I will update the council on the status of that next month. As far as status board goes, it's been used more and more frequently recently, which is excellent. I'll encourage everybody with the expected events this spring and summer. It is a great way to coordinate your comms plans with neighboring agencies just to avoid conflicts. And we've had several do that even just today. If you look at status board, depending on the region you're in, there's quite a lot going on. And it's been helpful for those agencies in coordinating. So thank you for everybody that is using it. If you have not yet signed up for it, we continue to onboard new users. And we also offer training that is available at no cost to the agencies. As far as FirstNet goes, we've had 2 FirstNet sites come up over the last month in Iowa. We've had a small cell node in Waukee light up, along with one in Tingley, Iowa. I believe that's southwest of Creston. And finally, to continue on with the question from last month, as far as in-person meetings go for both the 911 Council and the ISICS board, over the last month, I've reached out to groups that we normally work with for those in-person meetings. The feedback I got is that while some of these buildings will be open for public access come June and July of this year, it seems like we're still under a holding pattern for in-person meetings at the moment. My plan or approach from here on out is to reach out to those groups routinely to ensure that we can get back to in-person as soon as possible. And as a part of this, we'll also have to, of course, ensure that there's a pathway for virtual attendance. But I think that goes without saying, since that's been our MO for the past many, many years as far as virtual attendance. So that is my report, Mr. Chair. I will go ahead and take any questions.
Any questions or comments for Swick Myers? Thank you, sir. We'll move on to an update from Homeland Security's CISA Emergency Communications Division. Is Jim Lundstedt on today? Doesn't sound like Jim's on. We'll move to item D, which is a Chapter 34A Administrative Code Committee update and review of recommendations.
Hey, Vice Chair, this is Tracy Bearden. We don't have anything. We're kind of just standing by to those subcommittees with the state kind of move forward and provide work for us to do. So we're just waiting. So thank you.
Okay. We'll put this on for next month then. See if anything has changed. Item E, baseline knowledge for 911 Communications Professionals Committee update.
Good. And actually,
Nothing new to report with that committee.
one now. Well,
Very good, nothing there. Item F is legislative updates.
or the chief thought that the kids said that they were missing one, but I don't see more than, you got like 3 in here, don't you have 3 cards?
Dean Kruger, would you mind muting your line, please?
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Any legislative issues? Hearing that, we'll move down to item 8, which is unfinished business. Does anyone know of anything? If not, item 9 is new business. Hearing none. Item 10, travel requests. Doubt there's anything there. Item 11, business from the floor or 911 issues at the PSAPs. Anything from any attendee? Moving right along. Item 12, announcements. Meetings will continue to be held the second Thursday of each month in conjunction just prior to the statewide interoperable communication system board. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 13th at 9 a.m. Will continue to be virtual, at least for the foreseeable future. If there's no other business for the council this morning, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Murphy.
Second by
Motion
Anderson.
by Murphy and a second by Anderson. We'll be adjourned. Thank you all. Be safe. Enjoy the spring weather.
Thank you.
Thank you.